The CEO humiliated a quiet farm boy in front of the entire factory, mocking him, daring him to fix a machine no one else could. What happened next silenced the room and changed everything. In a massive factory stretching across tens of thousands of square feet, lit only by the harsh glare of flickering fluorescent lights bouncing off cold sheets of steel, CEO Richard Morrison walked in like a general surveying a battlefield. His steely gaze swept over the crowd of technicians clustered around a massive machine that had sat lifeless for 3 weeks. His face twisted into a, "Hey, farm boy, come fix our $15 million 0-cents toy, will ya?" Who knows, maybe dumb luck beats all these PhDs. The insult cracked through the air like a whip, followed by a wave of chaotic laughter from over 50 employees. There were whistles, belly laughs, like kids on a schoolyard who had just picked their next victim for a public shaming. And right at the center of it all, Marcus Thompson, a 19-year-old kid, slowly looked up from his battered old phone. He didn't flinch. Instead, he quietly tapped out the rest of his message. "Yeah, it's time. Begin." His fingers, calloused and scarred from years of farm labor, were steady. On the outside, he looked like any other small-town kid. Faded t-shirt, dusty work boots caked with red clay, but in his eyes was something deeper, a quiet that only those who've spent a lifetime swallowing rage could understand. That machine, the company's crown jewel, the most advanced piece of tech TechFlow had ever imported, had been dead for over 3 weeks, costing nearly $500,000 a day. They had flown in everyone, MIT engineers, Stanford PhDs, even NASA consultants and German specialists. No one had a clue what was wrong. It just sat there, cold, dead, and defiant. Marcus had no real reason to be at the factory that day except to pick up a few documents his mother, Helena Thompson, had left behind. She'd worked as TechFlow's legal secretary for 15 years. To most, Helena was just another loyal office worker. What no one knew was that today was her last day. In just a few days, she'd begin her first semester as an engineering student at Stanford, a secret her family had guarded fiercely, clinging to it like a final badge of dignity in a world that judged worth by pedigree and skin color. Make way, our tractor whisperer's coming through." Morrison barked again, his voice rising with theatrical mockery like a washed-up comedian playing to a cheap crowd. The factory roared with laughter, but in that laughter were layers. Some laughed with cruelty, others out of fear, nervous to stand out and become the next target. And then there were those who looked down, as if trying to bury the last flicker of conscience they hadn't yet extinguished. "Maybe he'll scare the machines straight, huh? Harvard don't teach cowherding tricks." This time, the laughter was louder, meaner. Phones were raised higher. Everyone wanted to capture this moment. A poor, black country boy, humiliated for sport. But Marcus didn't move. He stood like stone, staring one by one at every person in the crowd, from veteran engineers to maintenance staff, as if etching their faces into memory. His eyes, strangely calm, yet terrifyingly cold. In a quiet corner, Dr. Sarah Chun, TechFlow's lead engineer, whispered to a colleague, her voice low and sharp. "This is blatant racism. No one else sees this?" But her words evaporated into the thick air. No one replied. No one dared. Morrison stepped closer. The stench of cheap whiskey on his breath made others recoil. He was only a few inches taller than Marcus, but everything about him carried the menace of someone who had spent a lifetime pushing others down. "Bet the only machines you've worked with run on hay, eh, boy? Ever seen one that plugs into a wall?" Marcus didn't answer. He just stared back, like he was daring Morrison to say one more word, just so he could burn it into memory. And if you looked closely, there it was. A hint of a smirk, tugging at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't the smirk of fear, wasn't arrogance either. It was the smile of someone who had waited a very, very long time for this moment. A hush fell over the warehouse like a heavy velvet curtain. No more laughter, forced or cruel. The whole place seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment everyone assumed was inevitable. The poor black kid, out of place among the elite, would bow his head and walk away. Another living, breathing confirmation of every prejudice Morrison had ever believed. But that moment never came. Marcus calmly slipped his phone into his pocket, thumb brushing the screen one final time. A small gesture, almost casual, but in reality it sent an encrypted signal, coordinates, and a coded string only 3 people on Earth could decipher. It was the key, the trigger. For the first time since entering the factory, Marcus smiled. Not the tight smile of someone hiding fear, not the polite smile meant to placate a crowd, but a quiet, razor-sharp smile, like a blade slicing through ice. The smile of someone who already knew how this story would end, and wasn't afraid to meet it head-on. "It would be an honor to help, Mr. Morrison." 8 words, spoken with a kind of old-fashioned politeness, manners his mother had drilled into him with everything she had. But underneath that courtesy rang a funeral bell, too subtle for most to hear. Everyone, except Morrison, who, drunk on his own sense of triumph, mistook composure for submission, and he had no idea he'd just signed his own death sentence. No one there could have imagined that Marcus Thompson wasn't just a farm boy. He was the son of the very man who had designed this machine 3 years ago under a top-secret contract. A contract Morrison had trampled in his quest for personal glory. A betrayal that now, like a debt long overdue, had come to collect. Marcus stepped toward the machine like he was approaching an old friend with whom he'd once shared secrets. His hand brushed lightly across the steel casing, feeling the curves, the weld lines. Every laugh behind him faded into silence inside his mind. He had entered his zone, where sound and judgment no longer existed. "Anyone got a Phillips screwdriver and a flashlight I can borrow?" His voice was clear, not loud, not rushed, but it cut through the fog of doubt like a razor through mist. Morrison laughed louder, a desperate attempt to keep control. "Hear that, folks? Our farmer wants tools now. Maybe we should toss him a hammer, too. Might work better than German engineering." A few half-hearted chuckles followed, but this time no one was really laughing. The air had shifted. People were starting to pay attention. Off to the side, Dr. Sarah Chun stood still, her eyes locked on Marcus. Something felt off. He didn't move like a timid kid from the sticks. He didn't talk like some lucky college freshman who'd stumbled into the spotlight. The way Marcus walked, slow, deliberate, the way his hand swept across the machine like it was reading the metal's memory. It all clashed with the caricature Morrison was trying so hard to paint. Quietly, Sarah stepped forward and handed him the screwdriver and flashlight. "Thank you, Doctor." Marcus spoke softly. Then he looked her straight in the eyes. It was just a moment, but it startled her. "You designed the cooling system for this line, didn't you? It's brilliant work." Sarah froze. That information had never been made public. Only she and 3 others in upper management knew. How the hell did this kid? Marcus crouched down and opened the lowest control panel. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message popped up. "Coordinates received. Initiate Phoenix protocol. Date." Morrison still hadn't realized the game had already shifted. But Sarah, for the first time all day, felt as if someone had snapped her awake from a fog. As she looked at Marcus and saw not just a bright young man, but someone carrying a truth too big for anyone in that room to fully grasp. A short, quiet message flashed again on Marcus's screen, like the tremor before a coming storm. "Coordinates received. Initiate Phoenix protocol." No one saw it. No one knew. But in that moment, the world seemed to split in two. On one side, a crowd still laughing, and on the other, a 3-year-old plan rolling forward with unstoppable force. Richard Morrison, still lost in his one-man show, kept performing like the fool he never realized he'd become. "Look at this, people. He's gonna fix our $1 million machine with a damn screwdriver. Better get this on TikTok. It's bound to go viral." Laughter erupted again, But now it had a strange edge to it, uneasy, forced. Some looked down at their phones instead of the boy in front of them. Eyes started to drift, as if something primal inside them was whispering that something big was about to happen. Something none of them had ever seen before. Marcus kept working, his movements sharp and deliberate. The first panel came off smoothly. Then the wires, the modules, components no engineer had dared touch without a blueprint. He spoke under his breath, not for anyone else, but Sarah, standing close by, caught every word. Sensor pressure still set to European spec, but the voltage has been converted to US standard classic mismatch. Sarah felt a chill crawl down her spine. That was the exact theory her team had been circling for weeks but had never been able to confirm. And this kid spotted it in minutes? A cold realization swept over her. Meanwhile, Morrison, sensing the shift in focus away from him, barked out desperately to reclaim the spotlight. "Let me tell you something, boy. If you screw that machine up any worse, I'll send your mother packing back to the sticks. This company doesn't have room for useless families." The threat landed like a punch to the chest. Marcus paused for just a second. A flicker of rage tightened his grip on the screwdriver. But when he looked up, his face was calm, almost cold, and it made Morrison instinctively take half a step back. "Are you sure you want to gamble the company's reputation right now, Mr. Morrison?" His voice was soft, polite even, so polite it felt like mockery. The entire factory fell silent, as if every sound had been vacuumed from the air. Morrison forced a dry chuckle, but there was hesitation in it, the kind of laugh from a man who knows he's losing, but refuses to drop the act. "Who the hell do you think you are, threatening me? You're nobody." Just then, Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time the message was short. "Arriving in 20 minutes. Clear the path." Marcus didn't respond. He bent down again, calmly linked two internal wires, then pulled a small device from his pocket. About the size of a phone charger. Sarah instantly recognized it. A custom voltage regulator, the kind only a design engineer could build. "Where did you get that?" Sarah whispered, stunned. "My father always said, preparation is the quietest way to show you're strong." Marcus didn't look up, but those words sent a shiver down Sarah's spine, not because of the tech, but because of the calm, the confidence. Like he'd done this before. Like he'd been here before. And then the machine shuddered, a soft whine echoed, metal shifting, a faint click deep within the belly of the beast. And then status lights began to flicker on, red, then amber, then green. One by one, like notes in a symphony announcing the return of life. A wave of disbelief rippled through the crowd. Morrison shoved past two employees to get to the front. "Don't you cheated? What did you do? What is this?" Marcus stood up, casually wiped his hands with a rag. Unbothered, unrushed, like a teacher explaining a lesson to a student who hadn't done his homework. Simple issue, voltage mismatch between European components and US power grid. Anyone with basic industrial electronics training would have caught it. Not a sound in the entire factory. No one spoke. No one laughed. Only Morrison remained, face flushed red, exposed for the fraud he was, and yet he hadn't realized that his nightmare had only just begun. The machine wasn't just working again. It roared back to life like a beast awakened from hibernation. Smooth, precise, more powerful than when it was first installed. Performance readings climbed past factory specs. The production line surged forward in utter silence, no applause, no cheers. Everyone was too stunned. Dr. Sarah Chun stood frozen, looking at Marcus with entirely new eyes. Gone was the curiosity meant for a strangely bright kid. Now there was something deeper. Respect and regret. She was beginning to see everything she had missed. The calm wasn't theoretical. It came from lived experience. The confidence, the precision. This wasn't textbook knowledge. This was the mastery of someone with thousands of hours in the real world. She whispered to herself, almost in awe, "Who are you, really?" Marcus didn't answer. He just checked his phone. 15 minutes left, Everything's still on schedule. Dr. Chun, do you believe people should be judged by their ability and character, not by where they come from or the color of their skin? Sarah nodded, without a second's hesitation. Marcus gave a slight nod back. In his eyes there was something beyond forgiveness. Trust. Trust that she was one of the few who truly deserved it. Then get ready. In just a few minutes, Mr. Morrison is about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. Across the floor, Morrison avoided eye contact, hands on his hips, mumbling excuses to himself to save face. But no one was listening anymore. No one cared. And just as Morrison tried to pull attention back his way, the man walked in. A sleek black car rolled to a stop outside the main gate. No horn, no fanfare, but every step that followed echoed across the concrete. Sharp, steady, resolute. Each footfall felt like a drumbeat, pounding in the chest of every silent onlooker. He looked to be in his early 50s, tall, composed, with neatly cropped salt and pepper hair. His charcoal gray suit wasn't flashy, but every stitch, every line spoke of quiet power. In his hand was a worn leather briefcase, aged but still gleaming, like it had walked through 100 deals and carried the weight of 1,000 hours of invention. The factory doors swung open, and suddenly the entire space fell silent. Morrison looked up, eyebrows tightening, not yet grasping what was happening. The man stepped inside, his gaze sweeping the room, not with contempt, not with arrogance, just the calm of someone who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. He stopped and spoke a single sentence, his voice low, steady, and as sharp as a surgeon's blade. "Sorry to interrupt. I'm Daniel Thompson, and I believe you just tested my son?" The entire factory froze. Morrison stared, confused, his forehead wrinkling, mouth stammering. And Marcus, stepping out of the shadows for the first time that day, wore a smile full of purpose. "Dad, Mr. Morrison wanted to see if I could fix the machine you designed." Sarah held her breath. The words Daniel Thompson rang in her head like a bell breaking through fog. She knew that name. She had read technical reports, signed only with the initials DT. A man once whispered about as the genius behind groundbreaking advancements in industrial automation. Then, 3 years ago, he had vanished from the engineering world, without a trace. Now here he stood, in the flesh, smiling, calm, and Marcus was his son. "Mr. Morrison challenged me to repair the very machine you built." Marcus said it softly, but every word landed like a rivet punched into steel. It wasn't just truth. It was an indictment of an entire web of lies Morrison had spun for years. Dr. Sarah Chun stood motionless, as if turned to stone. The name Daniel Thompson echoed through her mind, crashing past every barrier of disbelief. She'd heard it, never in the press but in hushed high-level conversations, where elite engineers spoke of him like a legend. The ghost of a man who'd rocked the industry, then vanished like a myth. Now he was standing right there, in a simple gray suit, radiating a calm that made every ego in the room feel suddenly small. Morrison blinked, stumbled back a step and stammered, I thought you were a farmer." Daniel smiled and slowly opened the worn briefcase, pulling out a thick stack of documents. "I am a farmer, but I'm also the one who designed this machine, under an exclusive confidential contract with TechFlow 3 years ago." Sarah stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she scanned the signatures on the paperwork. Her eyes widened, almost disbelieving. "Oh my God, you're DT? The one behind the entire system design? I always wondered who could have created something that advanced." Daniel turned to her, his expression soft, sincere. "I read your paper on energy efficiency. Very impressive work. It's just a shame someone else took credit for my designs all this time." Beneath Morrison's feet, the ground felt like it was giving way. He blurted out, louder now, like volume could drown out the truth. "That's impossible. My in-house team built this machine. I have all the documentation." Daniel didn't flinch, He simply pulled out a tablet and tapped on an archived video. Here's the meeting from March 14th, 2021. You were the one who hired me. On screen, clear as day, Morrison sat in a lavish office, signing a contract with strict confidentiality clauses. His voice, his face, his gestures, unmistakable. And in the clip even said, "We'll never put your name on this, just leave it as DT. It'll be safer that way." The factory went silent again. No more jokes, no more recordings. No one could deny what they were seeing. Morrison's face turned ghostly pale. He turned to Marcus like a drowning man grasping for a branch. We don't have to make this public. We can keep it quiet. No one has to know." Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm, but his words cut deep. "Really, Mr. Morrison? What about when you humiliated me, threatened to fire my mother in front of 50 people? Want to keep that quiet too?" Morrison froze. Marcus held up his phone. On screen, a live stream played. Already racking up tens of thousands of views, the comments were coming in fast. "Racist CEO caught in the act. This guy's disgust. Boycott TechFlow." Now, Morrison stumbled back, face drained of all color. You can't." "I already did, Mr. Morrison, and everyone here saw it." Daniel didn't say another word. He didn't need to. The truth now blazed like the noon sun. Morrison's arrogance, greed, and prejudice weren't just exposed. They were immortalized, streaming live across thousands of phones, echoing through every corner of social media, and the storm was only just beginning. Daniel Thompson looked Morrison straight in the eye, this time with zero tolerance in his voice. "But here's the real kicker, Mr. Morrison. You just publicly violated the confidentiality contract you signed with me. It's all on video. You took credit for my intellectual property, handed the glory to someone else, and worse, you revealed my identity in public, breaking the anonymity clause you agreed to." The air thickened like fog before a thunderclap. Sarah Chun took a step back. Her lips quivered. Her hands dropped to her sides, as if she'd just realized she'd played a part in a deception far greater than she ever imagined. "My God, Richard, you lied to us. We took credit for someone else's work. We built our careers on a lie." Morrison turned toward her, his eyes wide, trembling, like a child caught red-handed, desperately grasping for a lifeline. But the next blow came not from Daniel, but from Marcus. And this one wasn't about engineering, it was about the law. "And one more thing, Mr. Morrison, you've just committed a serious federal civil rights violation, publicly humiliating me for the color of my skin. You threatened my mother's job, mocked me in front of 50 witnesses. We have everything. HD video, live eyewitnesses. In this country, that's a crime." Morrison looked like he'd been thrown into a hurricane. His eyes darted around, searching for an ally. But every face had turned away. Some were quietly texting, others whispered. A few held their phones low, still recording. No one stood with the man about to fall. "You don't get it. It was a joke. A character test. Just a joke." Daniel turned back, voice steady and cold as stone. "A joke? Calling my son a farm boy? Telling him to use cow-herding tricks to fix a machine? Threatening to fire his mother in front of the whole company?" He paused, letting the silence answer for him. "That's your definition of a character test?" Morrison's phone started ringing over and over. The glow from the screen lit up his ashen face. His hands trembled as he picked up. From the other end, a sharp, angry voice barked, the unmistakable tone of a board member. I can explain it's not what it looks like." Marcus stood beside his father, arms crossed, wearing the same unnervingly calm expression. "Let me guess. They're asking about the hashtags, racist CEO, TechFlow, boycott, or maybe the video that's blowing up with millions of views." Morrison swallowed hard. A bead of sweat traced a slow line down his temple. "Listen, we can settle this. I'll give your mom a raise, maybe even a promotion." Daniel smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile that offered forgiveness. "But Morrison, the only thing we want is justice. And I have a feeling that tens of thousands watching right now agree with us." In that moment, Richard Morrison, the man who once ruled, a multi-million-dollar empire, knew he was finished. Everything he thought was power, status, control, had just been undone by his own pride. He hadn't lost a game. He'd set the whole board on fire. 48 hours later, Richard Morrison packed up his office in silence. A cardboard box held the last of his belongings, a family photo, a desk clock, and an old business award. All of it meaningless now. The board of directors had voted unanimously for immediate termination, no objections. His company accounts were frozen, his corporate car repossessed, and ever since the video went viral, Morrison had become a symbol of prejudice and abuse, reshared millions of times, with tens of millions of views across every social platform. Your personal items will be delivered to your home. The company car has been reclaimed. Your access to all internal systems is permanently revoked. Legal requests that you refrain from making any public statements about the matter. The legal assistant spoke without making eye contact. Her voice was even, without malice, but there wasn't a shred of respect left in it. Richard Morrison stood there, silent, as the recycled cardboard box was placed on his desk. One by one, he swept his belongings inside like a machine. A faded family photo, a commemorative desk clock, a gold-plated pen long out of ink, all now reduced to relics of a power that had vanished into smoke. In less than 2 days, he'd lost everything. 15 years of work, his reputation, multi-million-dollar deals that had only happened because of who he was supposed to be. But more than that, he lost the mask the corporate world had once gifted him, a facade of respect that had now curdled into shame, spreading like a virus across the internet. Across town, in the modest kitchen of an old farmhouse, Marcus Thompson sat beside his father, taking a call from someone he never thought would dial his number. "Hello, Marcus, this is Linda Roberts, Teklo's new interim CEO. The company would like to offer you the position of lead engineer with a starting salary of $120,000, 0 cents a year, plus a full scholarship to complete your degree at Stanford." Daniel glanced at his son, eyes soft and proud. Marcus stayed composed, but after hanging up, he turned to his father and asked just one question. "What about the contract breach and emotional damages?" Daniel gave a faint smile and picked up the phone. "Linda, this is Daniel. What they did hurt more than just our pride. They stole years of recognition that my son and I earned through sweat, sacrifice, and dignity." His voice was low and firm, like a man who had accepted being forgotten as long as truth was eventually returned. "I understand, Mr. Thompson," Linda replied. "We've approved a $2,500,000 0 cents compensation package for the patent theft and unpaid royalties. Additionally, TechFlow will be establishing the Thompson Diversity Fund with an annual budget of $500,000. That weekend, Dr. Sarah Chun came to the farm in person, no longer as an engineer, no longer as a superior. She came as someone who had made a mistake and wanted to make it right. "Marcus, I didn't speak up when I should have. But today, I've brought something that might change many lives." She handed him a packet printed on official company letterhead. TechFlow wanted to establish the Daniel Thompson Institute for Innovation, a place offering scholarships, mentorship, and internship opportunities for young talents from rural areas, minority communities, and backgrounds that had long been overlooked. "We need people who aren't just good engineers, but who understand the value of justice." And from that moment on, the Thompson family no longer had to hide. Helena, the mother who once stayed silent while her son endured cruelty, could now walk tall through the halls of the company, smiling as she told others about the boy who earned Stanford's invitation through nothing but brilliance and heart. Everything she had once kept hidden, out of fear that prejudice would crush her son, is now proof of a victory that needed no cheering to feel triumphant. In Morrison, he quickly learned just how brutal the business world could be to someone branded as toxic. The same people who once slapped him on the back now crossed the street to avoid him, Former investors went out of their way to leak that any company affiliating with Morrison was committing brand suicide. He tried launching a consulting firm. No one called. Tried booking speaking gigs. Conferences dropped his name hours before showtime. His career didn't just end. It was buried so deep no one dared dig it up again. 6 months later, Marcus walked across the campus at Stanford like someone who had stepped fully into a new chapter of life. Golden sunlight brushed the back of his simple jacket, wind whispering through the towering oak trees. He didn't need to flaunt his GPA or scholarship. His presence among hundreds of elite students was already the loudest answer he could give. At that same moment, his father, Daniel Thompson, was in a virtual meeting with 3 of the largest tech companies in America. Each consulting deal on the table was worth more than Morrison's entire career earnings. But Daniel didn't smile for the money. He smiled because he knew his ideas were finally building a fairer world, one where intelligence was honored in the right hands. And then a documentary dropped. Racial Humiliation, The Cost of Corporate Arrogance. 15 million views in a single month. Short clips flooded TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Dozens of young Black, Latinx, and immigrant kids saw it and turned to engineering with fire in their eyes. They didn't just see a machine get fixed. They saw a door swing open. At TechFlow, the transformation was even greater. The Thompson Diversity Program recruited 50 new engineers from remote towns, unknown schools, resumes once tossed aside for not being a culture fit. 3 new patents emerged from those minds, boosting company value by 40%. For the first time, even Wall Street admitted diversity wasn't just a social responsibility, it was smart strategy. And Morrison, he now lives quietly in a small town where no one knows him, or worse, where those who do keep their distance. His consulting emails go unanswered. Every time his name shows up on Google, it's attached to thousands of results, allegations of racism, abuse of power, deceit. The connections that once helped him climb to the top have now become barricades sealing him at the bottom. The arrogance that used to be his greatest asset has become the very thing that signed the death warrant for his career. On a podcast called Social Justice in Action, Marcus finally shared his story for the first time in a voice deeper, wiser than his age. Real revenge isn't about destroying the one who hurt you. It's about building something so meaningful that every label they once threw at you becomes irrelevant, outdated, and powerless. Daniel sat beside his son, the weight in his eyes finally lifted. He added, gently, but his words rang like thunder, "I always taught my son that true talent has no race, no class, no pedigree. But I also learned sometimes the world needs to see that truth clearly, publicly, and undeniably." The story of the Thompson family was never just about winning or losing. It was living proof that judging people by their background or their appearance is the fastest way to overlook some of the greatest minds this world has to offer. Marcus didn't just fix a machine, he rewired a rotten system, one where prejudice crushed potential every single day. He didn't choose to destroy his enemy, he chose to build a legacy that man could never even dream of reaching. Marcus turned a moment of public humiliation into the ignition spark of a quiet revolution, one where thousands of young people who'd once been dismissed now had a shot to shine. And if anyone ever asked how did he get his revenge, the answer would be simple: by changing the world so completely that the man who once humiliated him became utterly irrelevant.